How's everybody doing today? Well, I made a boo-boo. So I missed some of the footage on this bus. So y'all gonna be kind of starting late in the thing. I don't know what happened. I was filming this bus with the air compressor job, and I have a camera just like this one that I had set up, and I was talking to you guys. Maybe the camera got tired of me borrowing the engine over 600,000 times in order to get the timing marks set up. But the camera won't boot up. We can't get it to boot up. We can't get the footage off of it. So we kind of missed some footage on this bus right now. So y'all gonna come in about halfway into this job. We lost some of the footage. I'm gonna go over it real quick and kind of catch you guys up to where we're at in this bus. We're pretty good ways. So we've got the alternators off. We had to pull the alternators. We had to pull the bracket. We had to take the bumper off. Let me get my headlight on so y'all can see what's going on. So we had to pull the bumper off. We actually had to disconnect the motor and raise the motor up. Lots of corrosion. We had to cut off a lot of bolts on this bus. Rusty, rusty, rusty. As you could see, we could not get the accessory drive off. So we had to pull the accessory drive out of the engine. The bolts are severely corroded, and you can look at this bolt and see that it's been corroded for a long time. That bolt's not gonna come out of there. And the problem is we're gonna end up destroying this accessory drive trying to get it off this aluminum compressor. And we've got to get it off because we need the drive coupler that goes inside of here. The drive coupler that hooks to this accessory drive and then hooks to this gear on the end of the compressor. So we're gonna end up breaking this housing in order to get it off because, like I said, those bolts are never gonna come out. And they're broke off inside the compressor itself. So we're gonna end up causing damage probably to this core, which this core is junk anyway. And we're gonna end up causing damage to this accessory drive. I already knew that, so we purchased the new accessory drive. That's this right here. If you look in here, you see this drive coupler that's in here. This is, see what that box says? Genuine Cummins parts. And then you come and look at this drive coupler. And if you look at this drive coupler, it says made in, let's see if I can get it right there so you can see it. It says made in India. See that? And then you got this Genuine Cummins. And it says China. I don't know if you can see that. So maybe they only use the not China parts on the non-original parts. I don't know. See China? That gear says China. I just found that interesting. I don't think it makes a difference, but I did find that interesting. So, another thing in the video. Whoever was the last person to put this compressor in, or that compressor in. I don't know if they put a used one in there, if it was, 400,000 miles ago that they put this compressor in, but they took this drive out and they did not time it correctly. You have got to time these correctly when you put them in. I know people will tell you, they will say, you don't have to time this because it doesn't matter because it's an accessory drive. It's not a fuel pump. Compressor just needs to turn. It doesn't matter. It does matter. And the reason it matters is this pulley right here. This pulley right here has timing marks on it. And that's how you do your tune-up. So with the timing marks that's on this pulley, you rotate the engine over, and that's how you do your tune-up. That's how you run your overhead on this engine. So if this is out of time, it makes it very difficult to run the overhead on there. And in order to put this in time, you have to pull all that back off. So don't do that. Put the compressor in time. And it also, a lot of people don't realize, but you actually are supposed to time the compressor. Now, I don't know if this is true or not, but if you can look right here on this Cummins book that I have, it says to install the air compressor, and I'll read it to you just in case you can't see it on the camera. It says position the timing mark on the air compressor crankshaft at 12 o'clock. So that's telling you you're going to take this compressor and you're going to stand it up at the 12 o'clock position. And you can see that. See this? The timing mark it shows. Probably hard for you guys to see. But there's a timing mark on this pulley. And you got to stand it up at the 12 o'clock position. And then you've got to rotate this, and it says the dowel pin. You see this dowel pin? That dowel pin right there? To the 2 o'clock position. So 2 o'clock would be about right there. So you'll rotate that to the 2 o'clock position. That puts your compressor in time. Now, there's a lot of controversy with that. Some people say it doesn't make a difference. Some people say it does make a difference. You could talk to an old Cummins guy, and an old Cummins guy will tell you if you don't time the compressor will clatter, and you won't get the life that you want out of this compressor. Don't know if it's true or not. I don't build Cummins engines for a living. I don't build hundreds and thousands of them a year in order to give an opinion on that. All I know is Cummins put this in the book for a reason, so that's what I'm going to do. And there's that coupler. If you look at that coupler right there, that's the coupler I've got to get out of that so that I can put that on. So the next step, I'll show you as best I can. It's going to be very difficult for me to time the engine and hold the camera at the same time. And I don't have anybody else here that can crawl in the hole with me and kind of show you what I've got going on. So I'm going to try and set it up, and if I can get the footage, we'll put it in the video. If I can't get the footage, then I'll kind of show you afterwards. We're about ready to put this accessory drive back in and get it timed. I've already got it. In order to time this accessory drive, you have to turn this engine over 80 million times, it feels like. My arm feels like it's about to fall off. I think it's actually 21 full revolutions. That's all 4 strokes, I think is what they say. But I don't know if y'all can see this. It's probably gonna be really hard on this with this camera because my other one quit. So you see that X? That X has to be lined up with an X right there. It's hard to see on the camera, but there's an X right there. You have to line that up with that X. You could barely see it right there. You see that X right there. So that X is lined up with that X. There's also a 0 and like an arrow. And I'll show you the arrow. So when you install this at the 12 o'clock position, which we're about to install, you have to install the accessory drive at the 12 o'clock position. When you install the compressor on it, you have to install this with it at the 2 o'clock position. So 2 o'clock position would be right there, or right there. Now, you want to be very careful if you pull an accessory drive out. Do you see that pin right there? They'll get some wear on them. They're not a press fit pin. So this pin can fall out and fall into the gear train. Very, 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 very careful that that does not happen. You'll cry if that happens. That means the whole front cover's got to come off. If you look on the front of this pulley, with this at the 12 o'clock position, then you'll see this little hash mark right there. Right there. That hash mark needs to be pointing at the other hash mark, which is, you can't really see it. You can't crawl in there and see that because you have the front cover on. But if the X is lined up, X to X, that means that this, if this is at the 12 o'clock position, so that's perfectly up, this should be lined up. And then that means that the 0 and 0 crank to cam should be lined up. So that everything should be where it should be. And there's a little cover that goes over top of that plug right there. This little plug goes over top of that hole that you see right here. To this hole right there. And like I said, seems like it takes just forever to bar over and over and over and over and over. If you got a couple people, y'all just take turns. One person, you'll be swole by the time you get it done, I'll tell you. My both arms feel like they've about to fall off. So we've got a new Cummins original gasket. The other thing that you have to be careful of, which I will show you in this book, right here. If you look at the diagram, the number 1, there is a special copper washer. And that one right there has a copper washer, and the threads have to have thread sealant on it. Because if not, it'll leak oil. I'm gonna go ahead and assemble the accessory drive so that the gear is on there and it'll help me flush this motor. But we need to flush this motor because if you look at this oil, it's been contaminated with coolant. So we need to flush this engine. They figured out they had a problem pretty quick. They did not run the engine like this. We've already drained the pan, but we need to flush the motor out. We need to get all that coolant out. So we're gonna have to run some cleaners in there. And not only that, but we're gonna have to run it, drain it, drain it, and then run it and drain it one more time. That's the way I like to do it. Other people will say, you can just drain it once and fill it back up. But for me, I like to do it multiple times. But the other thing is, in each time I do it, we'll need to run the engine for a little while, because once the engine gets up to temperature, it'll start evaporating some of that water out of the engine. So the engine shouldn't be junk. Like I said, it hasn't washed out the bearings or anything like that. They caught it, towed it here. That is not going to be an issue. The other thing we have to do is drain the air system on the coach. The air system is also full of coolant. So with all that being said, where we're at, to catch you up, I know I'm talking fast and I'm kind of going through it, but I was talking at a normal human pace before I realized the camera was broken. The block has been cleaned up. We need to wipe off where the power steering pump goes before it goes in. But the block has been cleaned off and it's prepped and ready for the accessory drive. The other thing that we have to do, there's one more thing. This gasket goes on here like this, and they tell you this right here, if you look at this, if you twist this just a little bit, just like that, that's an oil leak. You cannot twist that gasket. The bolts will go in there just fine, like that, twisted, but it'll leak like crazy. So you got to be very careful with that. All right, so now we're gonna get this accessory drive installed. And like I said, I'm gonna try and set you guys up, but it's gonna be very hard to set you guys up and do this at the same time. So I'm gonna try and see what I can do, because I've got to crawl through this hole and lay in that hole while trying to feed the accessory drive in and get the bolts in at the same time. So it's gonna be kind of difficult for me to do. But I'm gonna try and set you up so that y'all can kind of see what I'm doing. All right, y'all should be able to see some stuff from there. Let's get a light in there. All right. Woo. Almost dropped them. Get it at 12 o'clock position. Just like that. So wiggle the gear train a little bit. It's a tight fit. Just like that. This is the bolt. They have a silicone and it's got the that special sealing washer I was just talking about. It's got to be the hardest one to get in, of course. All right, we're gonna snug them up and then we will torque them to spec. All right, so we got to torque them 35 foot-pounds. There's no, since we snug them up, there's no, Cummins does not tell you you have to do them in a star pattern or anything like that. And for a flat face like this, it really doesn't matter. Check them one more time. Good. 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 All right. Before we proceed on much further, we're going to put this oil sensor in. All right. We put a new O-ring on that. Sensor was fine. It doesn't look like it's been that long replaced, so that was one of the things I asked the customer, and they were pretty adamant about just replacing what needed to be replaced. They didn't want to do a lot of preventative things, which, you know, that sensor's not too bad to change. It is nicer and easier to change with the alternators out of the way, but again, it can be done. So now what we have to do is we're going to have to turn the engine over until the accessory drive is at the 2 o'clock position. So we're gonna stick this in the crank, turn this till it's at the 2 o'clock position, which is right there. So we're at the 2 o'clock position. Next is we gotta get this compressor apart so I can get that drive coupling out of there, which is gonna be hard. We're gonna end up causing some damage to this. Because it's so corroded. I've tried heating it. We've got 2 bolts that are super corroded in there. So we're gonna get it off, see if we can tap on it a little bit, because this core is already junk. I mean, we're not hurting it any more than what it is. It's gonna go straight in the metal dumpster. Let's see if we can put it in this vise. That's a good thing and a bad thing about aluminum compressors. Good thing is they're lighter. They make it much nicer on branding to put in. And we're gonna get the old motivator out real quick. All right. Stuck. That's all I need, right there. Drive coupler. Boop. Goes in the new one. All right, drive coupler is in. Drive coupler engaged. I got a new one. All right, so we got that. We're putting this on now. A new one. They got O-rings on them. And it's rusty and corroded as the other one is. I had to heat that line up with a, what they call a mini ductor, to get it out, get it off, because it was just so corroded. The fitting was, so put new fittings on it. Makes everyone's life a little easier. When you're working on stuff like this, it's the little details that make a difference. So like, you see this little paint right here? You want to clean that off. Because when you put it up against the gasket, I can feel that paint with my hand. And because I can feel it with my hand, that means it's going to raise that gasket up a little bit. So we need to repair that. So I've got a really fine disc on my little thing right here. All right, now for the hard part. The hard part is manhandling this thing in that hole without tearing this gasket up. We gotta turn it, we gotta clock it. She's tight because she's new. A bit more. Perfect. All right. All right, let's go see if we can find some bolts. All right, you guys watch me struggle. And then we're gonna call it a night after we get this in. We're gonna take this line out of the way on the front first. All right. Okay. Now, get this on. Come on, man. Crap. We got it started in there, but it's not clocked right. It's a little off. So what we need to do now is see if we can back it off. This wiring harness is a pain in the butt. There we go. Is it? That's it. We need the gasket in it. Let's back it off just a little bit. I'll back it off. Alright. Slide it back just a little bit. Bring it this gasket on there. This is the hard part of this gasket. I don't like to use high tack or anything like that because most of the time it makes it more difficult. Incoming tells you not to. We're going to take this bolt back out. We're going to put these on the bottom. And the reason is it takes a special wrench to tighten the bottoms up. And then we gotta get under it. Ouch. This is a special wrench. Crazy looking thing, huh? You would think they would be like, you know what? Let's just make why can't we make this compressor in a manner where it uses normal hand tools to put it in? But no, let's make this $200 wrench to put it in. And for anybody out there, it's not a snap-on. It's a Matka. I used to have a snap-on, but I let somebody else use it and then it got misplaced. You can get away with using a regular wrench on the tops, but on the bottom you definitely cannot get to those without this wrench. Ugh. Taste of 1540 in your mouth is not good. So I'm bringing you down here with me. Might be hard to see what I'm doing, but I've got to put this. Here's the bolt. We got to put it up here. I don't know if you can see my hand, can you? They go in the bottom of the compressor right here. It holds it on that mount. I don't know if this is sacrilegious, but I'm using a cat ratchet on a Cummins engine. This is your oil sensor. So click that in, and then we got to push this red tab over. There you go. And then we've got your cam and crank sensor. You hear that click? And this one click. And you got to push the tabs over. Push the tab over. Cover that back up. Right. We gotta replace this line, this old crusty line. Comes back here and it comes down like this and it goes on here, but this line looks so rough that we're just gonna go ahead and replace it now, especially because we've had to mess with it. And usually in my experience, when you mess with stuff like that, it's time for a replacement. I think we'll call it for the night and then we'll start back on it tomorrow. So I'll bring you guys along. All right, I'll see you guys in the morning. Good evening, everybody. So I got super busy today. Last time we talked, I told you I was gonna come in the morning and work on this bus. But I got super busy, parts got delayed, but I'll catch you up on what we got going on. So we got the pulley on. You all saw me put the compressor in. We jacked the motor up and drilled out several bolts, and we've replaced all of the clamps because we had to jack the motor up and basically slide it out a little bit so that we can drill out what we needed to drill out. All the mounts have been replaced. Everything is tight. So now we have to put the fuel pump back in, get the coolant lines hooked up, get it full of coolant, and hopefully we could fire this bad boy up. We'd also need to change the oil and run it for a little while. Like I said, we'll probably run it for a little while tonight, and then we'll get it on the pit, and then we'll drain it again tomorrow, and then kind of go from there. So I'm gonna set you guys here. First step is I'm going to work on this line right here. We gotta get this line on to the new one. So that's step number one. All right, there's that. All right, so we got that side on. So y'all see what weighs this up. All right, and then we've got this right here. Take this out, put this down. All right, we want to make sure, if you look right here, we want to make sure there's clearance around that line. The line isn't touching anything because as the engine vibrates, it can chafe. And we don't want none of that. So now, we got to pick this thing. want this touching, we don't want that touching. All right, well, that's on. Now we got to get that back line on, which is the hardest coolant line to get on. I don't know if y'all can see me. We got to crawl in here. And this line right here, which is the one that's not very fun. This one right here. I'm either getting really good at my job or that went a lot smoother than it should have, which scares me. Because that means something else is gonna mess up. Next, fuel pump. Got a fuel pump. Fuel pump. There's an O-ring that seats that, and that O-ring looks brand new. Doesn't even look rolled yet. Oh, this one. This one's super hard. There's an O-ring there. See that? O-ring goes on there. This is a test port, so you could check fuel pressure. And the last one is the one in the fitting. This one's seals by the threads. I don't know what gasket this goes to. It came in the box with the pump, but it damn sure don't fit that pump. Hopefully this pump fits whatever I'm working on. It looks the same. Here we go. That's it. That's her. I don't know if I can bring you guys along on this one. It's too hard to see. Yeah, I'm gonna have to set y'all up. Might not be able to see what I'm doing here, but the gist is I gotta stick that on the back of that compressor right there through all those pipes and hoses, which will be difficult. But we can get it done. Where there's a will, hopefully there's a way. This right here, I don't know if y'all can still see me. This wire right here, this is a shutdown for the pump. Stop cylinder. All right, so we had a couple customers here, and I couldn't really film because I had other customers here and we had a bunch of other things going on. So what we have left to do is I got to put the alternator belt on. I got to fill the bus up full of oil, and I got to fill the bus up full of coolant. So you can see where compressor failed and it mixed coolant with the oil. So we've drained it. We still have to flush the system. We've got a fuel pump on. We've got everything hooked up over here and put back on the way it's supposed to be. We got the new power steering pump on. See it right there. That was kind of a pain in the butt because the old pump was oriented differently. They don't make that pump anymore. So we had to redo the lines, and I had to redo the fittings so that they would work and they wouldn't interfere with anything. So you can kind of see the way I did it down there. And then nothing's touching, everything's good. All right, so what we did was we got all the connections. Remember I said connections, connections, connections. So we've got this one here. It's nice and tight. So it's nice and tight. And then the starter, it's got the boot on it and everything's tight. Everything's fastened, snugged up. So really what we have left is put the belts on. We got to tidy up a couple hoses right there. Prime the engine, fill it full of coolant and fill it full of oil and crank her up. I'm sorry y'all missed a couple things, but that's one of the problems sometimes with making these videos. I still have, you know, people and things, but anyway. All right, well, once we get this thing fired up, I'll bring you guys along and show you what we got going on. This bus has been a job, I'll tell you. Look at this. I got to go through all and put all this. This is what it's taken to put this thing back together. All these tools. And you still have some down there. I still have to pick up some over there. This is everything it's taken to do what I've done today, tool-wise. That's crazy. Rusty and crusty. That's what I should nickname this bus, Rusty Crusty. You look at these, just look at these bolts right here. That's what everything looked like. It's crazy. Southern people go up north to get a deal. Northern people come down south to get a rust-free bus. You just look at that fan shroud up there and see how corroded it is. Brackets up there too. Anyway, I'll bring you guys along when we fire this bad boy up. But for now, Brandon's going home. He's tired. All right, so we're back this morning. I told you last night we'd be back working on this. So we need to get the bumpers back on because we got the bus back assembled. But when we pulled it apart, we found that, you know, this broke off. It's just rotted and rusty. And you can see two bolts hold it on right here. And you can look at this side, see the stud that's sticking out? That's what mounts it goes through this plate right here. And this mounts on the back side with nuts, and that's what holds the bumper on. It sandwiches it in. This bolts on with these bolts right here. And this has what captures your door. And then this is just your bumper, your impact bumper. So you take those two bolts off, you could take this bumper off and replace the rub rail when somebody backs into something or anything like that. Well, they don't have any of these in stock, and they don't have any of these studs in stock, and they don't have any of these bottom pieces in stock currently. So I can't get one. I have some of that stuff in stock here because we keep a lot of that vintage stuff here, but we don't have any of the studs. This is a left-handed stud that screws into the top of this bracket. So we have to make something today in order to get this bus because the customer needs this bus tomorrow, and we got to put the bumper back on. So as you can see, I got on the workbench. What I did was I drilled a hole in this bracket right here, and I stuck a bolt in it. And what I'm going to do is run a bead around that bolt. It doesn't have to be, you know, a structural weld or anything of that matter. It just has to be enough to hold that bolt into that bracket. So that's what we're about to do right now. Now that we got the coolant pump replaced, we got the bus full of coolant. Now we're gonna try and crank her up and see if she runs. She's either gonna explode or run. We'll see which one she'll do. So we didn't get to cover a lot of footage on this video that I wanted to. I mean, the video is already an hour long now, so it would have had to probably be a multiple part video. We did lose a lot of footage at the beginning of this video due to camera failure, which is, there's nothing I can really do about that. The other thing is we had like the accessory drive, the coolant lines, and a couple other components on the bus was on back order from Cummins. So that kind of delayed us on it too. And a customer had a planned trip. And by the time the back ordered parts came in, it was kind of a rush to get that bus back together and done. We did run into a couple other problems, and I wanted to let you guys know about that. You know, we had to clean out the air system. We had to flush the engine multiple times, like I stated earlier in the video. But the air system in particular needed a bunch of work. You push the parking brake button in, and it would be dumping air out of several valves. So it took a little while for us to get that fixed. And, you know, due to other buses running, you know, just the inner workings of it, I was just not able to film and get that stuff done in the time frame that I needed to. I try my best to do it, but this is a working shop. I can't set up to film and deal with being the boss of this place and running the operations and all that stuff and filming at the same time. So I do try my best, and I try and get as much footage as I can for you guys. And this is the first time that we've done more of a mechanical video. I do, you know, little things here or there, but this was a more in-depth kind of seeing me as I work. And if this is something that you guys enjoyed, please let me know in the comments. If it's something that you don't enjoy, that you would rather just see the inspections and just see the stuff that's broke instead of this lengthy video of repairs that we do, just let us know. But anyway, let's kind of show, you know, some of these other valves. So you have this, which is the ABS modulator valve in the rear, and this solenoid on top is the traction control valve. You'll see that electrical connector on top, and then the left and the right is the modulator valve. So what this valve does is that electrical solenoid basically closes the air going off to the brake chambers and causes the brakes to pulse. And the same thing with this traction control solenoid. The other big issue that we had was this relay valve, the emergency brake relay valve. That was particularly bad. When you push the parking brake button in, it was leaking so bad that by the time you got out of the bus and walked to the back, the button would pop back up. And these two valves on that bus are not easy to get to. And you can just look at the rust and corrosion. Like, you couldn't even get the bolts out. This bus was very rusty and made it very difficult to take even the simplest things off. And that's something to keep in mind when you are shopping for a bus, when you are looking. Rust does matter. You know, a book time job, you know, to change that valve is hour and a half maybe. It could take 3 hours or 4 hours by the time you get up there, because stuff that you have to take off to get to it is rusty. So you have to replace that now. And then it takes the extra time to pull that valve off or cut it off or whatever you need to do to get that valve off in order to replace it. So rust is a serious issue. I know that that job was a particularly more intensive job than what it should be because of rust. We were able to get it done. They're fixed. I told them that they need to change the oil again, probably in a couple 100 miles, and they need to regularly drain their air tanks. We dried the air tanks as best we could. We checked all the valves that we could, but the fact of the matter is, with that much coolant contamination in the air system, there's no possible way that we can go through the entire bus and change every valve. That is not feasible. They'll just have to bring it back periodically for me to kind of check and make sure everything's okay. Again, if you like this kind of video, like and subscribe. If you don't, you'd rather see something else, let me know. If there's any questions, concerns, complaints, comments, or criticisms, put it in the comments. I appreciate you guys, and we'll see you on the next one.